Hi YouTube, I hope you're doing good. I'm doing okay. I had a pretty fun morning, got a few things done while I was listening to 007 play live music. I shared his link um, in my community and over on Facebook. Um, he can he's a performer. I'm not one to really like cover material people that play other people's music. I mean, for fun is one thing. That's sort of like what I do, just because typically played the flute or the drums or the harmonica or some other things, but picked up the guitar at 12 because I always wanted to play, so I'm rhythm and backup. I can play a few notes, but not like I do on some other instruments, but for fun. But when I listen to Richard Avery, I feel like I'm either in the audience or playing rhythm backup for him or something. He makes you feel at home. I don't know, I like him. He's a friend of mine, so if you haven't seen his channel, maybe check it out. Like I say, links in the community, and I'm sure he'd appreciate it too, because he works hard at what he does. So, and like a lot of us, so what do you think about that pretty good size 4.7 and 8 earthquake that was in the tri-state area of New York, New Jersey, and Philadelphia? I'll give you my thoughts on it. In 1937, Nikola Tesla had a machine for frequency, and let me see, what do they call that thing? You've probably heard about it, how these two policemen, after like the lady down underneath him thought, or the people in the apartment, they thought like the building was going to start to fall apart, and the more it vibrated, the worse the frequency for the whole movement of the thing, like perpetual motion type of thing. Once it gets going, it keeps going, 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 and that's what these sound waves and this vibration was doing. And these two cops ran in there, they said, in time to see him take like a big piece of metal rod or sledgehammer or something, I don't know, and smack his machine into two pieces, and then the vibrating stopped. But they so it was a man-made earthquake. So if they could do it back in 1937, and is it just happenstance that it's happening in New York City or in that area, that vicinity of the world? I don't know that it's such a happenstance. So just my thoughts on that, because when you do, sure, it says in the scriptures they're going to have earthquakes in diverse places. That doesn't mean that God isn't using Satan's plans to, something will come out of this. Either a bunch of people are going to wake up to what the dark cabal has always done to us, or they're not. That's my thing is, if you're new here, briefly, I was adopted and raised by the Masons, Jesuit Eastern Star group at, Shriners, Scottish Rites, those type of affiliated groups, and got emancipated when I was 17. I kept running away, and finally the court said, okay, she's got a job and a place to live, leave her alone. And there wasn't really much they could do with me because I was radical in their lives, and the last thing people that practice mind control and craft wizardry, the last thing these witches would want is somebody they can't control, and somebody maybe a little more brighter with the Christ spirit in me than they are. So that's my life briefly. So, yeah, in other words, not a lot of the society likes me, and I don't care. No, I do care. I wish they weren't as cheap, like slumlord, you know. So inside their souls, they're just like worth less as humans, you know. So anyway, um, so now I'm going to talk about baked goods. I'll probably be all over the place with this video, just visiting with people because it's not anything really set. A lot of times it isn't. So I made a cream cheese Danish the quick way yesterday, and I've worked in bakeries before, and I shared the video to the woman where I got the recipe. And you use roll-out croissant dough and cream cheese, sugar, and an egg. And you put the yolk in the middle and brush the top, and then sprinkle sugar on top of that after you mix the or the white on top rather, and the yolk in with the cream cheese and the sugar. So you put one layer down, you put your cream cheese filling and the croissant on top, and brush it with egg white, and then sprinkle sugar on it. Well, I didn't like the sugar on top, and I love croissant dough. I'd make my own, but I make them giant and then make like a sandwich with them for a meal. So, but anyway, so the croissant dough itself is wonderful stuff. But what I would do different for a Danish is I would let it rise. So just taking that dough, it was too dense, it was too doughy and too sweet in a weird way. And then on top, and then I'd just take the one bottom and I'd let it rise. And I'd take about half of the other pack of it and I'd let that rise. I'd cut it in strips first though and let it rise. So it won't be so doughy. I'll be using half of it. And then I'll have the bottom down, it'll be risen. Then I'll put my filling on top. And then I'm going to I'll make it again, but I'll take the ones that I've rolled out and put them lengthways on that thing, and then diagonal with a few more of them, and it'll look like diamonds. I'll bake it like that, and then when I take it out, and I'll maybe brush a little egg white on the top because it does make it more golden, or maybe not. I might use a little bit of milk. It would make it a lighter color on top. So I think that's what I'm going to do. The heck with the egg. I'm not putting the egg in the middle either. And then when they're done, because you could taste the egg. It was icky because there's eggs in croissant dough. It was just too much. And then I'm going to take a little powdered sugar and water and make a glaze and drizzle it over those diamonds after it comes out. It will look more like a cream cheese Danish. It won't be as doughy, and the bread itself, the croissant, will be fluffier like it's supposed to be. So yeah, the ladies have a good idea with that quick way of making it, but even my way isn't going to take too much more time than the original was like about, maybe. Well, the woman on the video made it in 10 minutes. I don't remember if she stopped to wash her hands like when she was working with her egg or whatever she did, but so that's what's going on in my life. So cream cheese Danish, I gotta give it about a 6, and that's pushing it for me because I worked in a bakery, and I've made my own Danish, so out of my own dough. So I give it about a 5, but it can be tweaked to probably it will probably be about 11 when I tweak it, you know. So if you're the lady that made that video, good job for real. You know, there's other people out there doing that same recipe, and she really simplified it for people. It's just like, you know, no need for me to do something somebody's already done, you know, with the same concept, you know. Unless you're going to simplify it for people or make something a little more clear that people didn't understand. That's pretty much what this lady Natalie did with that recipe. So yeah, anyway, so yeah, I had fun on 007's channel this morning. There was some characters in the chat that were having fun, and you know, it makes it pleasant. So, and Doug woke up to that. He didn't really even sleep a lot the night before. He was up till about 4, got up early, had 3 different appointments, and then the third one was to go pick up some tractor tires, and the guy he bought them from, they both were a little older, so these huge tires, it took 2 of them, and the other guy's a big guy too, so, but still, I knew something told me he was going to be pretty wiped out when he got home for all the running he had done, and then those tires, I thought, it takes a tractor to lift a tractor tire unless you're really strong, have 2 very strong people, yeah. And that's the only way he's going to be able to mount them on the tractor too, is if I help him for real. Because even some of his friends they're not as strong as me. And, you know, you can get hurt when you're doing things like lifting really heavy things and you have a weakling with you. If you've ever moved furniture or anything, I'd rather do it by myself. I get hurt letting other people take control of my muscles. Jeez, moth. Anyway, it's springtime here. Their bugs are trying to get in. So, yeah. Anyway, that might want it's been in here for a few days. I think my cat's been trying to get it too, the one with the broken paw. She's a good hunter. But they fly higher. They're not down in her usually. But they do battle. These little moths, they think they're mighty, you know. Did you ever get a fly that keeps bugging you, you know, and then you swat it and it'll come back even worse? Well, these things get scared, but they'll battle you, and we have these black wasps. I think they're called mud wasps, or ground wasps, but they battle us too. They're pretty wicked. If they get you, they're going to really hurt you. So my youngest son got stung by some of them. He was mowing the perimeter of the property with the hand mower, and they got him. He come running to the house. It's like, wow. I mean, he was okay and all that, but I'm sure, you know, like he got stung once and then ran, you know, when he saw him coming out of the ground. So, yeah, I just waited. You wait till like nighttime or morning when the dew is on the ground, or in the evening, they're not out flying around. And then you can demolish them or whatever. I probably waited till later to get the mower out of there, is what I'm saying, if I remember right, you know. Earthquake in New York. Yeah, what's that for? So they can take some more of their big buildings and remodel them? Like I told people, this Build Back Better thing is only for the well-to-do. It has nothing to do for the infrastructure of our country. They could care less. They don't care about anybody. the apartment buildings that weakened with that vibration, and all the, I mean, pipes in the ground. That was my first thought, because the guy who raised me was a supervisor for a Minneapolis water department and helped design the waterworks in there. So, and it goes under the Mississippi River, and it's pretty cool. That's where I learned about architecture, was from his working with that. But anyway, back to the water pipes and water mains, and anytime you have movement in the ground, like in the spring going into summer, when things start to thaw out, the ground moves and pipes shift. So that was my first thought, was the water mains are probably going to break if they do stuff like that. It wouldn't have to be the oceans rising if they can't get enough seismic activity. They could just do it from their waterworks within that city. The water mains, just open them up. All the hydrants, you know. Who knows what they're going to do? I don't trust them. Being awarded the state from day one, I will never trust their scummy asses. Never. You couldn't pay me to do that. And anybody that does is stupid. That's my opinion. Stupefied. Hypnotized. Really. And they're masters of it. Or at least they think they are. I think God's probably a little more intelligent than that. But am way ahead of them. Something tells me. Because, you know, it's just like these cartoons like I grew up with. We had like this one called Snidely Whiplash, and he was always saving, or Dudley Do-Right was always saving Penelope Pitstop, I think was her name, off the railroad tracks when Snidely would get her. And he'd tie her up on the tracks and try and make a train run over. And Dudley Do-Right was a Canadian Mountie, and he'd ride up on his horse and save her. And so the bad guy always got like squished in the end, and different things. You know, if you really look at the way life is, like you got this jerk in your life, and they keep pushing you, and they think they're getting away with shit, and then it's just one day something super funky happens to them, or you personally do something to them, and because they deserve it, you know, and they're really surprised that you retaliated because they weren't expecting it, because you always put up with their shit, you know. When you don't know what a dog is, and they're pretending to be human, and then you find out, has a tendency to sort of piss you off after you get, I'm 66, so when you get about like a few decades into this horror ordeal, this whole ordeal, when we get a few decades in, we start to get kind of, if you don't get bitter, it's not that you get better, but you do get better at stopping the shenanigans and bullshit that's going around in your personal life. And if you can make an impact out in public, all the better for the next generation, you know? So that's what I'm all about right there. So, and people my age, my peers, you know? So, which I am a trained counselor and a minister and a few other things that people call me, or know that I do. Lots of things, actually. Just doing it in a different way, because people have been so deluded from mistranslations and misinterpretations and just flat out lying to us and changing the language and changing the calendars and everything, all of it, you know. If some of you don't know who Rebel Call is, you might recognize his voice from being on YouTube for a long time. They've been trying to stop him. He's talking about the earthquake and the eclipse and correlation and witchcraft and some other things. To me, witchcraft is nothing but trickery and lying and begging from the devil. That's, you know, you're either on one side in your heart or the other, whatever we want to call this spiritual war that's going on, you know. So, anyway, I'm going to share, I'll put in the description, Rebel Call's channel for everyone because he's always on top of what's going on with the dark cabal against us and the next generation. That's his heart lies in protecting the next generation. I mean, us too. He loves us too, but he's like me. I love everybody, but we have to worry 7 generations into the future like the Dark Cabal does. And if we don't start doing that for our offsprings and the people we care about, they're just not going to be educated enough to protect themselves, you know, because these people are flat out trying to put everybody in cages. Me personally, I'll go down fighting no critters coming on my property and taking me off it. And people would say, "Oh, you'll do this or you'll do that. You know, you want to make." And that we'll see about that. I'll be taking chunks of flesh out of people. It'd take dozens of people to get near me if I get crazy wild. You don't corner a wild animal and think you're going to be okay, you know. And they've pushed me to the point where I am totally radical and I don't know a man. I mean, I'm not making a challenge, although I will spar martial arts with anybody, but there's not a man I know that will stand up to me when I get radical. There's some that pretend pretty well, but not well enough. So, like with my friends, you're either beside me on that level, like a warrior in this big spiritual war, or you're not, one of the two. And no, I don't think that women are superior physically to men or mentally. Spiritually, maybe, but yeah. I think we should have that nurturing spirit connection from God because we need to nurture our offsprings. Otherwise, if we take that out of the world, we're going to have a bunch of animals and nobody will be able to live. And that's what they're doing. They're taking the heart and the soul out of all this and leaving people empty and cold and stupid and sexually retarded. Totally regressed human beings is what we're looking at if we don't get a handle on it for people, you know. I'm talking misplaced sexuality. I'm not talking about normal, healthy relationships out in this world. I'm talking about the freak show bullshit going on, you know. Speaking of that, they were spraying my skies again this morning, getting ready for the non-eclipse that we won't be able to see. Somebody else mentioned too, might have been Rebel Call, with all the, and we all know about, or some of us about, most of us maybe, Project Bluebeam and the reflective properties of the barium, strontium, aluminum, and God knows what else that we've heard that's in our skies. And the reflective properties and the schematics I read on Project Bluebeam in the Blue Lodge when I was 15, with the reflection from cameras from Earth and the sky, like the LAN network we have, local area networks, well, like from the planet to the sky and the angles that they use for the reflection and movement they can use and projecting, they can show us anything up there and make us believe it is what they're doing. That's my thoughts on it. So, what do you think? You know, and I heard other people kind of like thoughts with like that. Sometimes like it's an inner feeling or a thought that you're thinking, like your first initial thought. If you're not on the dark force wavelength, your first thought probably isn't going to be something like doom and gloom, and you're hoping everybody's going to get washed away from the ocean and all that fear porn that they do. Like the ocean levels are rising, but yet the Statue of Liberty, the water level, is exactly the same as it's always been since it's been there. You know, proof like that. So you know that they're doing things like spraying the skies that we have no control over. And I'm sure you feel like I do. This is all of us. This is my air, your air, just as much as it is some pig up in the sky dumping crap on us, you know? So I'm sure you feel the same way. Only thing we can do about it is challenge people like right to their faces when we meet them. If they're dogs, they're dogs. You put the dog in the doghouse on a chain where it belongs or whatever. I didn't chain my dog, but if it's a wild dog, it needs to be put down, you know, take it out of our misery, you know. I'll have another smoke and chat a little bit here. So, yeah, I asked 007 if he could play Walking on the Sun by Smash Mouth. I don't think I can play it. I probably sing most of it, but I'm not sure I could sing all of it. I couldn't get the beginning of it on the guitar. Richie, I'm sure, could. You know. Do, 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 you know. Might as well be walking on the sun. Do, do, you know. Alright, there ain't no joke. I'd like to buy the world a toke. Teach the world to sing in perfect harmony. You know. Anyway. And it talks about Mr. Wizard and how the kids were hippie chicks or hypocrites because we were gathered around the bonfire singing and clapping. Then what the hell happened? You know. So I got that backwards. I should have put the ones, but you got it. You know what I mean? Yeah. What happened was the generation before me that were actually hippies, and then us flower children came in, and we weren't so much worried about drugs and LSD or anything, but gathering together as people and friends to truly develop peace on earth. And then the adults turned into a bunch of hypocrites, and we saw what they were doing, that they weren't standing by the movement that they actually began. And so my generation tried to take it over and teach it to our kids. Meanwhile, the machine against our children was just pummeling them. And the biggest thing that any generation can do is try and separate the generations. Where we think, and I still don't like a lot of older people, and especially now I'm getting older, if they're my age and they're still acting stupid and not protecting the younger generations, I have a big issue and problem with them, and I'm not quiet about it. I make it known. A lot of people in my own family, adoptive family, and the blood relatives I found probably don't appreciate me because they're more pacified in the world. They're more conformist than I am. So, yeah, I even got married on Independent Day because it's Doug and I are a little different than most people. Um, not like for me, I'm a totally loyal person. So that's probably, even as a friend, I'm the most loyal person. Not for any reason. It has to be earned. I'm looking for people on that same level to value as my friends, as good people. That's what I hope for the whole world. But ethically, people are lost a lot, if not morally, or you know, but definitely ethically. Especially the world leaders, they're about as lame as you get. A lot of teachers, a lot of preachers, they don't care if they lie because they don't study language well enough to dig down to the deepest truth of that word. They just stay with a couple definitions and they're like, oh, I'm good. They don't care where the word came from, where it abbreviated off to, what it went into, or why. What type of deception could be used by doing this or that, or adding a couple vowels or taking a couple vowels out like the Hebrews did to the original Aramaic text, So if you do something different to the whole thing and change the meaning, it just drives me nuts. Anyway, so they're either, and even by lying or being lazy in their lax, their remiss, they're doing a disservice to people because they're lazy and they want to get paid for it, So some people aren't lazy and they work their butts off for other people and always have, and barely get comforts in life. We're lucky if we barely get them. So sometimes, or if like me, I always felt that the second half of my life would progressively be better than the first half. In some ways it is. My strength has sure pulled me through, and I credit that to God. All the times they tried to kill me physically, weird things, broken shit, and diseases, and wow, it's been a trip, but I've been kept safe or been able to heal miraculous things, like my spinal cord being pulled 1.5 inches. I was never supposed to walk again. Well, I did. I more than walked. I was a ranch hand. I had to be able to function. It took me a while. It took me about 6 weeks, about a month and a half. And that same year, I got the swine flu because I got the shot. I was working on a ranch, and they recommended that when the CDC did, I could just rip their guts out for what they did to me. They tried to hide my records. They really did. They knew exactly I have something in my blood, and they knew it, and they tried to cover it up, but I still have the hard copies, And I wrote articles over on morgellons.org about it. They're a bunch of scumlords, too. So anyway, I got the swine flu in 1976, and that took me out for a long time. I just dropped 30 pounds, I was just sick, really sick. It was amazing that I even lived through that. It was like, oh, wow. Yeah. So that was a rough year, but yeah, I mean, I've had like a stroke and broken bones, and I mean, bones breaking one set right after another in a few different spots for over a year. When I first started this YouTube, I was just getting over broken bones, and then had a stroke before that. That's a long story, but um, I can't prove it was all kind of like orchestrated against me to take my life. But I'll tell you this really quick. These fuckers put water fittings on my gas lines under my house, and I was being carbon monoxide poisoned um, slowly. And it didn't reach like the level to make any alarms go off or anything. But I had little animals that were getting sick too. Doug took his rabbit, to the vet, and he was supposed to die. They didn't think he'd make it, but they didn't know what was wrong with him. I fixed him, and I always had cracked windows. Things might have been worse in here if I hadn't had that too, but with my allergies, and I had an operation here for deviated septum and wicked allergies that the Mayo Clinic has like categorized for me. I'm like disabled in a lot of ways, but keeping stronger than anybody I know in a lot of ways too. So that's briefly kind of what's going on. So if I talk about things in the future, you kind of have a scope on me, what's going on. So I'm fighting the dark cabal. That's what's going on. All right, everybody. Have a really good night or day wherever you're at. Thank you for joining me. Peace and love from Pine City, Minnesota, USA.